Welcome. I'm Riley Karsh.
I'm Tova Kopan.
We are thrilled to bring you the We Go Boldly podcast.
Let's talk big burning questions, life changes, and maybe a bit of personal business.
Let's be bold and brave together. Are you ready?
I am. Here comes the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to We Go Boldly, the podcast. We are so very happy to have you with us today. It's interview day. I feel like I yell it every time. I get very excited. This is Riley, and I am here with my fantastic, wonderful, amazing, so all the good things, co-host Tova, and we are thrilled to be bringing you another interview about embracing your power in this season 7 fall season. I don't know. I'm just excited about it. Before we dive into who our guest is, I want to say hello to my co-host. How are you today, Tova? What's happening? Tell me all the news.
I'm good. It has been a week. We were recording this on a Friday. We're recording this on a Friday in October. I feel like you're going to be listening to this on a Wednesday in December. And so
I think that's probably right. Yeah.
This is like a flashback. Like, remember that day when somebody stole my credit card information? That was today.
Yeah.
But it's all, it's all working out nicely. Not for them, I hope, but for me it is. And yeah, it's Friday. I did not pay enough attention to our last season that was about not being busy and saying no more.
Yes.
And I am reaping the rewards of not saying no to volunteer opportunities right now.
Yeah. So, interesting you bring that up. So I am having a similar experience this week where it's all sort of coming to a head, and none of it is particularly bad, but I think this is really important. And then we're going to dive into who our incredible guest is today, because I'm so excited to have her here. But I do want to point this out for everyone who's listening, because it's very important for all of you to know that we are still learning. Like, yes, we are experts in the field and we have a lot of knowledge, and we've done, I don't know, countless hours of research, and we've got certifications, and we have all these things, right? But we're still learning and we're still growing. And so if you have a day where you're like, oh, I can't believe I made this mistake again, or I can't believe I did this thing again, and I'm like beating myself up for it, please don't, because everyone is making mistakes. Everyone is having these things happen to them. So Tova and I just did an entire season on busyness and how not great it is for you. And both of us got ourselves caught up in busyness. So it happens. It happens to the best of us. But anyway, all right. So apparently that's my soapbox moment. And who am I kidding? It's going to happen again. But
well, that's why I'm laughing, because I'm like, I say this now, and yet I bet when we're listening to this podcast in December, I'll be like, oh, I did it again.
Right. Exactly.
But it's all results on that summer day that I was like, I think these sound like really fun volunteer opportunities.
Yeah. Yes.
And they can still be fun. And also maybe you should say no more often.
Well, right. Sometimes we have to say no to things that we want to do, which is the harder part.
So we say no so that we can embrace our power, which is what we're going to talk about today. That segue. So I'm going to jump right in and introduce our guest, because like Riley said, we are so excited to have her join us.
Yeah.
Our guest today is April Daniels Hussar. She is the managing editor of romper.com. Check it out if you haven't already.
Cool.
Yes, it's so good. April's focus is on the day-to-day content that answers questions that keep parents up at night, as well as big picture initiatives like partnerships, special issues, content packages. And I'm going to read some descriptions of what she said she does. And it's all true, because I follow Romper and I see all of this popping up. So PTSD in parents to secondary infertility, navigating the world of picky eaters. There's often some celebrity things, and then also really big political issues as it relates to parents. So as part of her role, April also makes media and panel appearances as an expert in the parenting space, from Kids at Play Interactive panel monitors at CES to a new product judge for the Juvenile Products Manufacturing Association. Prior to joining Bustle Digital Group, April was senior editor of parenting at cafemom.com. She's contributed to a boatload of publications, including Self, Women's Health, Today.com, In Touch, Life and Style, New Jersey Family, and more. And of course, if it's not obvious, April is also a mom. So we are very excited to have her here. Welcome, April.
Unmuted.
There you are.
There we go. Welcome to the show.
How
We're
are
so
you?
happy to have you.
It's so great to be here. Thank you for having me. It's so weird to hear my bio read out loud.
Right? Isn't it a weird feeling? It's interesting, especially in the context of this show, because we're talking about embracing your power, right? And you just had a whole litany of your awesome things you've done, right? Read to you. So we're going to dive right into I think, one of our more difficult questions and talk about it. Do you remember the first time in your life that you felt powerful, or where you felt okay, I have some power, I have some strength in me?
Oh gosh, that is
It's a hard question.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing, I'll just kind of go with the first thing that popped into my head. I'm just thinking about when I got into theater when I was really little, like 5 or 6, I started taking my first little kids acting classes. And that's where I just felt like I could just really come alive and feel comfortable in myself and in my surroundings and with what I was doing. And it was just that joy of creating a world along with your collaborators that really felt powerful to me. But when I think about that answer, it's like when I was sort of pretending to be someone else as a child is when I felt powerful in a way.
I have so many feelings about what you just said, because one, my daughter loves theater, and I am so happy to hear you say that, because sometimes I'm like, oh no, am I that crazy mom who's like, go be on stage? But she's so happy there that I'm like, okay, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But also I think it is, it's one of those feelings, the feeling of power and the feeling of powerfulness. Is that even a word? Am I making things up? That we get, it doesn't have to connect to, I think we make the mistake of trying to connect that feeling to a stereotypical application of power, right?
Yeah.
Wherein, I'm the CEO, or I'm the big burly foreman telling everyone, you go here, you go there. Yes. But that feeling of power is very personal. And it has to be, because in order to feel powerful, it has to mean something to you, right? I've had a quote powerful job, but it didn't mean a whole lot to me. And so I was chasing a feeling that was not satisfying. And so constantly chasing a feeling that was not satisfying to me left me feeling powerless and confused, as opposed to powerful and interested in continuing that pursuit. And so I find this question fascinating from people, because everyone's like, oh, but that shouldn't be powerful. But of course it is.
I know, now I'm thinking, what do you mean when you say powerful, and what do I mean? And we might mean different things.
Yes.
To me, it's definitely tied up with feeling confident and you're in the right place and you belong in that place and you have authority. But I don't, gosh, I mean, I think I've grew up feeling so far from being typically powerful that I don't even think of being powerful as how other people might think of it, in the terms of having control over other people, or being able to, make the world do what you want it to do. I don't even, start thinking that way.
I think our definitions are the same,
Yeah.
right? Like I often think about power as something that you like, you embrace your power, you step into your power when you do feel like you belong. And it's not just like belonging in the world around you, but belonging in your own skin and like belonging in who you are. And it could be why when you stepped onto the stage, you felt that way because you were in control of what you were doing, right? Like, and you knew the lines or you knew whatever you were I'm supposed to stand here. And like you were owning kind of what you were doing. And so you don't have to be the producer of a show or the director of the show to feel that power. So I think we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Do you remember a time when you felt the opposite of that? The sort of, whether it's weakness or whatever the opposite of that is?
I mean, just sort of like delving right into my childhood here. I always felt I was not a like popular, cool kid ever, up till I went to this like funky private high school with a bunch of other like smart weirdos. So I really grew up feeling like a square peg in a round hole world. Just kind of like not having the right clothes and not quite understanding like the social cues. Like we didn't have TV when I was a kid, which now we don't have TV, but you still have like a million streaming devices and stuff. But like my mom didn't want me watching TV or seeing commercials. So I was like really out of step with like what the other kids were talking about. And so I mean, I grew up feeling not confident in my place in the world and in my like, immediate surroundings. So it's been, it's I'm 46 now and I'm still there's still residual effects of that. So yeah, but it's been a journey to like let go of a lot of that junk and step into my power, as you say.
So that transition period, I guess, from, I would call it a sense of belonging, right? Like not in, and having grown up in a similar scenario, that feeling like you didn't necessarily fit in or you didn't belong or you weren't comfortable in your own skin and then in the environment in which you were in necessarily. And then the transition from that space into, as you describe it, like a funky high school with people who were like-minded and maybe more in your comfort zone, right? What was that like? And how did that impact your sense of self and your like, and how you were able to draw from your core sense of who you were?
Oh my gosh, I mean, it's so complex.
Yeah. Yes.
And there's so much, because I mean, not to like completely derail onto another topic, but that happened at the same time as I started to go through become a teenager.
Yeah.
And started to be aware of my power in the world as an attractive young woman, and what felt like power was a very heady thing to start to feel, because it was like all of a sudden, you would get attention, and it felt that started to feel like a form of power, which I think is such a trap, and such a dangerous kind of way that our culture is still set up. So while kind of grappling with that aspect of things, I was also in an environment where I was rewarded for being smart and being thoughtful and being hardworking and having, I started to realize that I had, something to offer the world that besides just my own like internal imagination. But that was all happening at the same time as I was starting to, like find my sexuality and be noticed in that way. So it's complicated and blended up together. And
Yeah.
now I'm like, I've gone up and over the hill, and I'm like in this weird part of life where people start saying that soon you feel invisible and nobody wants to advertise to you anymore. And it's like, wait, what? Like what? Just like I don't know, if I hadn't climbed up that hill on those like false boots in the first place, I wouldn't care about this tumbling downside of things. Anyway, I feel like I just
This is fascinating. This is fantastic.
It is 100% accurate and relatable, and it's such a messy time of life to go from whether you're transitioning from one geographic space to another or not.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe we love parallel lives, but I also did the same thing. But regardless of that aspect, that transition, that like incredibly messy transition from, childhood to teenager years to young adulthood is messy and hard and challenging and
so hard.
So confusing. And then you add on the layer of culture to it and the layer of indoctrination and all the other difficult things that we talk about here on the podcast and that I know you guys talk about in all your publications. And you add on all those layers, and then what you just said is so 100% accurate. Then you get to our age group, in your 40s, and you're like, wait a minute, what? I just went through all this, like, and it feels like yesterday, right? Like for me, anyway, I feel like it just happened. Like I just went through the misery of being 16 and all of that. And then, I'm 43, I'll be 44 soon. And, I go and I wake up and I'm like, wait, I'm not invisible. I'm not dead. I'm not like asexual. I'm not.
Yeah.
Well, and I think what makes it extra confusing is every woman I've ever known who turned 40 is like, including Oprah, who I don't know personally, but she shared this, right? Like, we all know Oprah.
Act like we do, right?
Like, is like 40 is that first age, because I think it happens at 50 as well. But like,
yeah,
because Oprah's like, oh, I thought I was powerful when I'm 40. Now I really know. But like 40 was the first age that a lot of women were like, oh, now I'm stepping into my power.
Yes.
Now I get it. And obviously, April, you're in an industry who may now be saying, cool, see you later. Like, we don't, whereas women are going, wait, no, we just got here. Yeah. Now we're ready.
Yeah. Now we're ready. Now we actually have money to be able to buy some of the products you're trying to sell us, you know? Yeah.
Right. And not just money, but like mental fortitude, right? Like I hit 40 and I was like, oh, I am so much stronger mentally, emotionally, phically. Like, I mean, maybe not physically, right? Like I could probably run a mile faster at 20 than I could now. Let's back that truck up. But you know what I mean? Like I hit 40 and I was like, oh, there's so much I don't care about now. Like I just let's just move that away.
Yeah.
But people look at that as if like, oh, well, now you're not going to buy lipstick, right? Like, or whatever nonsense. And it's in fact, the opposite is true. Like I'm so much more interested in doing things for myself now than I was before, because now I don't really actually care nearly as much what anyone else thinks. And I'm much more interested in doing things for myself, which I find to be a matter of embracing my own power. But now I'm taking over your interview and I'm gonna let Tara ask her question.
I mean, I really, yes, all of that. And it's wild to me. My daughter just started her sophomore year of college. So it's just wild to see her going through life in all the ways that she's different from me, in all the ways that she's similar. And I'm so fascinated. And whenever I interview interesting people, who are my age or older, I always ask them, like, what do you think? Like, have things changed? Have they progressed? Like, what messages do you think our daughters or sons are getting now compared to the ones that we were getting. And I think that's that's a really just fascinating thing to think about.
Yeah.
What are we doing? Did we make it a little bit better? I hope so, but it's hard.
It is hard. Yes, it is. I mean, Tova and I both have younger children, and it is excruciating, especially, I mean, I have a daughter, and watching her go through some of the same things I went through is astonishing. I mean, it's astonishing that it's still that way. But on the flip side, there are things I think that are better and that are improving. And so, I have to balance my response, I guess.
Yeah. It's just like not quickly enough, but so much has progressed. But still, I still have my, 5'10", like size 4 daughter worrying about her way she looks, and and like as if that matters.
Right.
It still matters is what I'm saying.
Yes, absolutely.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to just keep going on this conversation.
Okay.
And we will be right back.
Hey, Tova, you know what I love?
Coffee, definitions, uninterrupted reading time.
Okay. All of those things are true. But I also love maps.
As in Siri, take me to the beach?
Yeah. Also, as in, who am I really and who do I want to be?
Yeah, I figured that's what you meant, but I also have the beach on my mind, so...
Well, we were talking about things we love, so that definitely makes sense. But the map I was thinking about is our Defining You course.
Yes. We put together Defining You as a way to map where you are and how you want to live your life.
So true. So many people struggle to find their purpose in a busy and noisy world.
That's why we made Defining You, our course meant to guide you to creating your own mission statement.
And there's good news. You can get it now on teachable.com. Find the link on our website at goboldlyinitiative.com/courses, or check out the link on our Instagram bio at Go Boldly Together.
We can't wait to see you there. Now, let's head back to the show. Well, welcome back. I just want to keep going. Keep going with what you were saying, because we are recording this the same week that Taylor Swift's new album came out. And she talks about a lot of those feelings in her album. And, feelings of not being thin enough, and feelings of a variety of things, and not being enough in some way or another. And I do think, your daughter is older. But I think all of us with kids, it's like, how do we speed up this process where they get to the point that they're happy with who they are? And like, we're all still maybe not struggling with it, but we are still aware of making sure we feel those feelings of being happy where we are. But this week I've been volunteering at our used book sale, and there were some like delightfully weird children. Like one little girl was like, there was one book on Chernobyl, and we all laughed that nobody was going to take this book. Yeah. And somebody took it in her class, and she came up, she's like, do you have any more books on Chernobyl?
Oh my God.
And I was like, well, I mean, there's Pompeii. Like, I didn't know what angle she was going for.
Is it the mass destruction?
Yeah.
And she's like,
I'm really just interested in Chernobyl. And I was like, that is just awesome. Yeah. Right? Like, yeah, because, my kids, especially my oldest, still really, really cares about fitting in. And I just want to be like, and I get it. I mean, I've told him over and over, being a parent and an adult is hard, but I don't ever want to be in middle school ever again.
No.
Oh God.
So like, it feels hard because it is hard, and I want you to know that, like, but I just wish I could be like, just be whoever you are, because it's fantastic. And so that goes though to a question that we can actually ask you a question. Like, how do you, like, what helps you feel powerful and strong in your life? Because I know we all feel this way, but we still need pick-me-ups throughout our life and reminders. So what do you do to sort of help yourself feel powerful and strong?
I mean, a lot of it is just faking it until I make it, or I don't like I get actually since the Zoom has become such a part of our lives over the pandemic, I'm even more kind of nervous about public speaking of any kind, because I can feel, I don't know if you can tell, like even my neck is like red right now. As soon as I start to feel myself starting to blush, then I just like, it makes me blush more as this whole horrible feedback loop. And anyway, I'm like showing you my red neck and how it's all red. But I just do it anyway. And
Yeah.
I have learned, I guess I've just learned through experience that like eventually the thing that I'm nervous about will be over, and I will have enjoyed at least like, the majority of it. And I'll look back on it and I'll be like, that was so great. I'm so glad I did that. Like, what a great conversation, what a great opportunity, what great publicity for Romper or whatever. And go me. And then kind of like really take a moment to appreciate that even though I was uncomfortable and nervous and started blushing, that it's okay and who cares? And I did it anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Tova.
Oh no, I was just gonna say there was I've probably shared this a ton of times on the podcast, but there's one of my favorite phrases from a variety of places is the phrase "be brave." But in a book I read this summer, the grandfather said, "Be brave or pretend you are. There isn't really a difference."
There's no I mean, I think that's what being brave is.
Right? But
If
just
you're not,
having like reading those words, and it's said a couple times in the book, and now that's what I say to my kids. I said, because I think they look at, we're lots of superheroes on our lives, and so you just assume that Captain America isn't afraid. Well,
right.
But you can't tell from the outside, right? Captain America could be like, oh man, like, and so he's just pretending, and there's no difference.
Yeah.
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 And like you say, I mean, courage is not doing something without fear, right? Like it's just doing it anyway. And so when we want to grow or stretch ourselves, sometimes we have to do something afraid, right? Like we have to just be afraid and do it anyway. Now, I mean, obviously not things that are bad for us or red flag things.
If it truly makes you miserable, then it's probably not worth doing if you don't have to, if it's not part of your job description or whatever. Like some things are not worth it. But if it's a fear that's holding you back, and that's the only thing that's holding you back, because otherwise it's a great opportunity or it's something that is thrilling or exciting for you, then that's where I try to fake it until I look back and see that I made it.
Right. And then that feeling, you can build on that feeling over time, right? Like of the more you do something, the easier it will get over time.
Exactly. That was kind of the other thing that I was going to say in terms of how I am, your exact question was kind of like, how do I find my power? How do I and I think it's really important, and something that helps me is to like really sit and appreciate the accomplishments or the wins. Like really take a minute to think about it and appreciate it. So it like that is what sticks in your head, and that's kind of what can help buoy you through the next, nerve-wracking challenge.
Do you have something specific you do to kind of celebrate your wins, or any sort of rituals or anything? Do you write them down, or do you like share them anywhere? Or...
I should. It's more of just like I'll go talk to my husband or, text Isabella or my mom. Exciting things, my best friend. And I'm sort of like have this little circle of people who all have been stressing out with beforehand and then celebrating with after. But I think it's when I remember to write things down that really, really helps.
Yeah. I am very bad at celebrating. And it's something I'm working hard on getting better at, because it's just it's so important that we give ourselves the opportunity to celebrate ourselves, right? To like
Mhm.
take a minute and say, I did it. I might have done it scared. I might have
Yeah.
not done it exactly how I wanted to, whatever it is, but I did it and it was, it was enough and I'm
Right.
proud of myself. And
Yeah.
so I find that that's such a like small and simple way of embracing power and
Yeah.
embracing our success.
It's so easy to dwell on the things that you messed up on or the misses or the
It's much easier to be like, oh, I can't believe I said this thing here and I forgot to do, I forgot to
yeah.
insert tab A into tab B or whatever,
I
whatever
mean,
it
it just
is.
must be amazing to be someone who is just born without that constant
Right.
like.
I don't think anyone actually is. I
I
think
feel like there
people
are some people though. I mean, I
I
don't
think
So
know.
I have a
people are lying
son.
if they are.
He's not, I mean,
Yeah.
I have a son who is, my middle son is as close to that as I think exists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has an inner sense of wise knowing and magic. And certainly he has struggles and he, but I think I had could not describe him until years ago. I was listening to a podcast. I was listening to Stay Tuned with Preet, and he had interviewed an author. I think it was Michael Lewis, but I'm not sure. And this author had selected, he did a variety of biographies and they about a whole variety of people. And they
Mhm.
asked him, what was there something similar that all of these people, I think they were all men, that all these men had in common. And it's not having a thick skin because they're not, they could be very empathetic and care about what other people think and have the feelings and everything. But it's also a feeling of like not caring and
Yeah.
not spending energy and like giving other people more control than they should have in your life that kind of connected them. And that gave them the freedom to start companies that exploded or run nonprofits or do all of these really spectacular things because they weren't spending all of their energy caring, about what other people think. Because I think a lot of our anxiety when it comes to speaking in public is not that we don't think that we can go up and give a speech. It's worrying about what the reaction to it will
Yeah.
be. Like
Yeah.
we all know we're capable at standing in front of a podium and reading a piece of paper.
Mhm.
And so I think that is, I don't know that anyone's totally impervious. But I do think that there are
Yeah,
people
but like,
out
do
there.
you think those people were born that way, or is it that men are conditioned in a different way, or did their parents do something? Like, how are you? I mean, you're raising boys. That's such a fascinating and different challenge than what I had to do as a parent. Like,
I
is
mean,
it the world? Is it the culture? Is it something you're doing? Is
I
it
think,
just
yeah. I mean, I think, yes. Right. Like
yeah.
I go back to what you, when I read your bio and like, it was, I don't know if you felt nervous or if you felt modest but
No,
you
I
felt
just was like, my
something.
instinct is just to be like, oh God, is that does that
Right.
sound good? Or I don't know. I don't
Right. And
know.
I do think that, I don't know if it's all men, but I think on average, men are more likely to own their
Yeah.
bio.
Yeah.
Right. And to, but so I think you need to read your bio once a week is what
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
prescribing. I think
Dr. Tova.
yeah. My prescription for you is read your bio once a week because it's incredible. Right. And so I have a question. You asked about kids. So my question for you is you ended up, you said it, like a funky high school for smart, weird kids. How did that happen? Did your parents kind of recognize that's when something you needed, or did you need to advocate for yourself, or like, how did that happen?
first of all, now I'm just thinking if any of my classmates might not think of themselves as like that funky and weird.
We only say weird in a very positive
best
light
We
on this
say it in the
podcast.
most loving way
Yeah.
possible and consider
Um,
ourselves part of the club.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's become a lot more mainstream. It's out in California. Like anyway,
Yeah.
I I just was so miserable in school, and I mean, and obviously in junior high, as we all are, but just really, like a lot of kids, just really under challenged. I always remember my like 8th grade history class was all open book, except for we had to fill in all the states and capitals on a map. Maybe it was 7th grade, I can't remember. And he didn't take the map down off the wall. Like, that was the level of much of it, what he gave. And like, that was the kind of prevailing feeling that I had in school there. And so somehow I think my mom had found out about this great private school in Marin County, which was a little ways away from where I grew up in Petaluma, California. And we just looked into it. We're like, oh, it's like it's so beautiful and it seems really incredible. And they had this amazing theater and dance program, and but it was really expensive. And we were like, there's no way, like, even if I could get in, that we could possibly afford it. And my mom's really good friend, whose son was applying, just said, let's just apply and see what happens. And so we did. And then I got in, and it was really exciting, but there was no way I could afford it. And then we kind of just kept going forward, even though it seemed like it wasn't going to work out. Like, at every step, it didn't seem like it was going to work out. And then I ended up getting this really great financial aid package, and like it worked out because and that is something that I have always thought about through my life as a lesson. Like, you often just don't know what might work out if you make the effort to do it.
And as you say, if you just keep going, right? If you just keep taking each step and seeing, and who knows what's going to happen.
Not being the one to say no.
Right.
Because maybe someone will, or maybe they won't, and it'll work out. I have to say, though, that ethos kind of got me in trouble when my daughter was applying to colleges, because I was like really encouraged her to apply to anywhere she wanted. And I don't know if the money situation is just much, or I was sort of lucky in a way that I had no money at all, so I was eligible for whatever money there was. Now, if you have a little bit of money, you're definitely not eligible for anything.
I was going to say, I think it's a little different now than when we were in high school. Although not entirely, but definitely a little harder at this point.
It was a real shock.
I can imagine.
That is something that I could talk about for another hour.
It's not something I'm looking forward to. I can just say that.
No.
Be realistic is my advice.
We do need to take one more quick break. So we're going to do that. When we come back, I want to talk to you about sort of your core values and how you get in touch with those. So we'll be right back, everyone. Stay tuned. In case you didn't already know, we love talking.
True story. More than simply talking, we love researching, prepping, and bringing this podcast to life.
We launched We Go Boldly with the goal of reaching people dealing with the kinds of questions and concerns that we also face.
Things like how to hear my inner voice, how to make sure my habits are worth it and stick, how do I feel my feelings and still manage to function.
After years of personal work and lots of trial and error, we realized we have a lot to share on these topics.
Now we've been broadcasting for over a year, and we are proud of our podcast.
And to no one's surprise, we still have a lot to say and talk about.
We sure do. We need your help to keep going. Every episode takes time and money to create, and we would love your support.
So, if you like what we are doing, please support us by joining our Patreon community and becoming a monthly subscriber.
Join our Patreon community today at patreon.com/wegoboldly. We are so grateful to all of our supporters. Now, back to the show.
All right. Hi, welcome back to the show. And just before the break, I was talking about core values and mentioned that I wanted to sort of move in that direction. So we talk a lot on the show about your inner voice and sort of how you get in touch with those core values that drive you and your principles and your morals and kind of like that. I'm waving my hands around. I do this all the time as if people can see me. If you're on YouTube, you could see me. Sort of how do you get in touch with your inner sense of self and who you are at your core? What is your like what is that like for you?
God, I don't even know.
I know I'm asking the hard questions today.
So
I'm
not
sorry. I'm sorry.
I know. I don't know if it's something I think I spend a lot of time thinking about.
Is it um sometimes I think people simply know themselves really well and sort of grow up knowing who they are, right? Like, and you're a kid and you just know I'm a person of integrity, or I'm a person who doesn't lie, or I'm a person who is a super loyal friend, or whatever. I'm just naming things
Yeah.
from I don't know what. And other times I think people lose track along the way. I mean, I think we all lose track at
Yeah.
some point in our 20s. Um, and,
Oh yeah.
you lose track along the way, and you kind of have to be ushered back into your sense of self at some point. So we like to understand this about people, and we like to ask this question because I think it helps other people who are listening remember kind of who they are and where they're coming from, and remember to check in, because it's something super important that we all lose touch with. And if you are making decisions, which we all are, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
are seeking a path, seeking a purpose, if you
Mm-hmm.
are a person who is looking to do something in the world, you want to understand who you are at your core so that you can do
Yeah.
things in alignment with who that person is.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, sort of now what springs to mind, I think it's like really recognizing in my daily life, in my work, when I'm just really enjoying myself a lot. And so
yeah.
like I have this memory of, it was actually a few years ago when I was sitting in this conference room around a table with like 5 other editors, and we were like looking at a project we've been working on, and we kind of had like a 5-minute discussion about whether or not something should have an exclamation point on it or not. And I just remember I like kind of paused and like just looked around the room and thought, I love doing this so much. Like, this is blissful. Like, there's almost nowhere else I would rather be. And to other people, it might be like, what are you talking about? Exclamation point or no exclamation point. And there are a lot of moments like that through my work where I feel I'm just really thrilled to be doing what I'm doing. And oftentimes it's not about an exclamation point or no exclamation point, but I think when you feel those sparks of happiness or of joy, if you're able to kind of follow them, then the path becomes one of more sparks of
Yeah.
joy.
I get the sense that your experience is less verbal and more one of feeling. And what I mean by that is that in that room on that day with the exclamation point, did you experience that moment more as sensation, more as feeling, more as like, was it something you felt in your body? Was it like something that ran through you, physically, or was
Yeah,
it words in your
more
head?
definitely more physically,
Yeah.
and just sort of a sensation than like, a paragraph
Yeah.
going through my head.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think what makes me think of that moment is that recently I went back. My mom still lives in the town where I grew up, and she has a couple boxes of stuff that I haven't looked through in a long time. And I found all these journals and like essays and letters and like notebooks I used to keep. And I pursued theater through college. So I always, I moved to New York not to become a journalist, but to become a famous actress. But when I went and found all this stuff, I realized how I'd always been a writer. I didn't really remember that part of. I didn't remember how much writing I used to do, how much I probably kept a journal almost every day of my life, like at least through high school. And so I felt like this real reconnection with myself, and a recognition of who I am now, like who I was then. And I think that there were probably a lot more points during my journey where I kind of didn't pay attention so much because I was so focused on this other thing. And I don't have regrets about the way my life unfolded, but I think, when I'm giving my daughter advice who's in college now, it's really to like, as you're exploring the world, really pay attention to those little glimmers of joy and follow them, see what road, they go down.
Yeah. And I wanted to point out the difference between how you experience that, because it's important for people to hear that one person might experience that moment as, like you said, like a paragraph, but other people like you're explaining could experience it as just sensation, right? Just feeling of like rightness of this is
Yeah.
this moment is correct. This is,
Yes.
this is like,
Yeah, exactly.
this is the right place for me. And so it's important that people understand that everyone has a different way of sensing, and we all have multiple senses, right? And so the way you might experience it could be very different. And I love that that's how you explained it, because I don't think, Tova, I can't remember that anyone else has expressed it quite that way.
Really? Oh, that's so. Oh, yeah.
Which is fantastic.
Hear how other people have answered.
I also want to just highlight, you said joy and sparks, and we have a whole course. I mean, it's an email course. It's only a week long, but it talks about like listening to your inner voice and like learning to like really tap into it. And it sounds like you really have connected to it for a lot of parts in your life without consciously doing it, right? Because you're aware of how you feel. But a lot of times when we talk about listening to your inner voice, it's not drudgery. It's not bad, but it's like meditate and do these things. And yes, it is directed to a lot of people who aren't taking the time to pay attention at all. But I think what you said is so important, because when you do listen to it, it can be joyful. It can be blissful. It can give you this spark, this knowing that like, I am in the exact place that I'm supposed to be right now. Right. And so maybe it takes work if you're not used to paying attention to it to like find it. But once you tap into it, it can be really wonderful. And I have no idea what movie I'm picturing, but there's some movie where the people are going through the woods and it's like foggy, and there's these like globes that are just like every few feet are popping up for them to follow.
Oh, yeah.
I cannot picture what it is, but that is the way I'm picturing you following your spark.
And that's fantastic.
Like that's what's in my head.
Theatrical. I love it.
Yeah. I think just in the interest of your time, I want to ask maybe one more question before we hit our quick responses.
Sure.
And you kind of said it, but if you could give advice for people who are embracing their own power, whether it's your daughter, whether it's yourself from 20 years ago, or whether it's other people. So what advice would you give someone who's trying to feel that the power, the way you describe power?
I just think it's so hard to do. And I struggle with this always. I feel like I will, but to separate, not to separate the voices, that there are different voices in your head, and there's always, I mean, I will always have that little character inside of me who's like, we probably shouldn't be doing this, like everyone else is dressed differently, or you're actually really not qualified for this, and maybe we should just not because we're scared. There's always going to be that. I feel like maybe when I'm like 90 years old it'll finally go away, but sort of being able to realize and hear that voice and acknowledge that it's there, and then okay, but then I'm also, and more importantly, I'm paying attention to the like deeper, more intelligent, more tuned in to reality voice. And that is the part of you that is leading you toward something that's joyful or that is fulfilling. And the little other voice is going to come along too, but it doesn't have to be the dominating voice. Yeah.
I love it. And I love that the little voice is like the little pet who you can be like, shush now. Shush now.
I kind of have this like vision of what it looks like.
I do now too. And I love it. I'm genuinely it's great.
I have passion for it. It's been through a lot.
Yeah. But it can go in its cage and it like,
yeah, just take a little nap, like
go in your pet cage.
Okay.
I also really like that the voice that's telling you to try the things and follow your passion, you described as like, it's one that's in reality. I think so often we associate the pessimistic voice as the reality,
right,
and the optimistic voice as naive and trying to get to our dreams. Like we get them confused.
Yeah.
And so the fact that that the voice that is guiding you to try things and pushing you to follow the sparks and the joy is the one in reality. And the naysayer is just a pet that you kind of pat on its head and be like, cool, thanks, I'm good. Because I think so often we equate following our dreams to being naive or doing what we think would be exciting to being not grounded. And yet you're right. It's the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It helps that I'm married to a psychologist. So we've talked about this stuff a lot.
I can imagine when that doesn't help as well, though.
Oh, yeah. It's very annoying when you're trying to win an argument.
Yeah.
Probably as annoying as being married to attorneys.
Yes. It's fun.
There's two in our house.
So there's two in our house, and now my children think that they're attorneys. So it's fun.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. So with that, I think we're going to move on to some quick response questions. Okay. These are fun, easy to answer, hopefully. And I am not allowed to ask you follow-up questions, despite the fact that I will have many in my brain. So you can just answer in short responses. I will ask short questions. All right, Here we go. There's 5 of them. The first one is, what is on your nightstand?
Oh my God. It's packed. It's everything. All the books in my to be read pile. I have like stacks of books. I'm a book. Well, I told you I wasn't allowed to have TV when I was a kid. So
same.
But the book I'm most looking forward to reading is actually a new book that's coming out soon by Catherine Newman, who's one of my just favorite writers. It's called We All Want Impossible Things. And I know that it is going to be a beautiful book. So it's at the top of the pile.
Excellent. All right. So speaking of top, who is at the top of your playlist right now?
Oh, Harry Styles.
Nice. Excellent.
I think Harry Styles is for moms.
I think so. Love it. Number 3, how do you relax?
I read. I mean, like getting on the couch or getting in bed and reading is my escape, rejuvenating entertainment. I don't know what I would do if I didn't know how to read. Yes. Or that didn't have books to read.
Yeah. Number 4, what is your favorite beverage?
Oh, I mean, I have many, but I do love a Pellegrino. If I could just drink Pellegrino, if I were a millionaire and just like could have Pellegrino coming out of my taps.
That's fantastic. All right, this is our only hard one. Number 5, what is the best piece of advice you have received?
My gosh.
Or any piece of advice.
I know.
Or a mantra.
Gosh, this is really tricky because then I start thinking about parenting advice, and I think it really goes back to that friend of my mom's I was talking about earlier who encouraged me to go ahead and apply to this school, even though there was no way I would get in or we could afford it. To, just the advice to go ahead and try it. Don't be the one who says no to yourself before someone else has a chance to. Yeah.
I think that's great advice, especially this just paraphrasing, don't say no to yourself, right? Like, how many times have we told ourselves no before somebody else got the chance to say it? I think, and particularly for women, I think we do it to ourselves all the time.
Well, absolutely. We don't apply to jobs because we're like, well, we're only 99.2% qualified. And meanwhile, men are like, I think I read about that once.
They're like, I put a sock on this morning.
It is. So my brief stint as a recruiter, you hit the nail on the head.
Right.
I would call up men and they'd be like, I took a course about that in undergrad.
Yeah.
And I'd call a woman and she'd be like, yeah, no, I don't think so. And meanwhile, the men would have conversations with recruiters with the door wide open at their current job. And the women would like shut the door and be like, you called me at work. And I was like, yeah, I called on your work line. I know. So I like it. Thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited. Where is the best place for people to follow all the great things that you do and say and write?
Well, definitely just go to romper.com and also you can find me on social media at April Hussar on Twitter and Instagram.
Excellent. We will include that in the show notes.
Yes, we will share that in the show notes and on our social. And that is it for today. We will be back next week with more on embracing your power. So work on it this week, everyone. Spend your week embracing power, figuring out what that means for you. And until then, we will see you back here the same time. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much for listening to We Go Boldly podcast. We know you're busy and we love spending time with you.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, let us know. Head to Apple Podcasts right now to rate and review our show. While you're there, be sure to click that subscribe button.
Want more us time? Follow us on all the socials at Go Boldly Together.
Want even more us time? As in all the coaching pizzazz. Find us at goboldlyinitiative.com for all the info.
We will be back with more excitement, research, and deep thoughts next week.
Until then, keep on being the bold, brave, amazing people we know you already are.